It was a late autumn afternoon. The leaves drifted softly to the ground, golden and weightless, while the sun lingered on the horizon, painting everything it touched in shades of honey and fire. Emma, who had just turned 24, was in the kitchen preparing a simple lunch, the kind you make after a long day of studying. Everything felt ordinary, familiar, but that day was quietly waiting to change everything. From the living room came laughter. Her father and a few friends gathered around the television, voices blending with the sound of an important match. It wasn't unusual. Her father loved company on game days. But among those friends was Leonardo, a man in his early 50s, graceful and reserved. The kind of man who didn't need many words to be noticed. He had always been kind to her, unfailingly polite, yet there was something in his eyes, a warmth, a depth, that Emma had never dared to name. As she placed the dishes on the table, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Leonardo stood in the doorway, a glass in his hand, his gaze calm but intent. No words, just that charged silence, the kind that makes your breath falter. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, his voice soft, almost hesitant. Emma shook her head, though her eyes refused to look away. And in that stillness, something shifted. He stepped closer. There was no rush, only the quiet gravity of two souls meeting halfway. His hand rested gently on the table near hers, and Emma felt a shiver, delicate as the fall of a leaf. The match carried on in the background, but for them, time had stopped. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The air between them was thick with unspoken understanding, a tender uncertainty. Then, from somewhere down the hall, a door opened. The spell broke. Leonardo withdrew with a quiet smile and returned to the others. Emma stood still for a moment, heart unsteady, her thoughts a blur of light and silence. That evening, when the house finally grew quiet, she lay awake replaying it all, not just what had happened, but what it had awakened within her. The next day, her phone buzzed. A message. Not from Leonardo, but from David, another of her father's friends, younger, livelier, with an easy charm that made people feel seen. "You seemed a little shaken last night," the message read. "If you'd like to talk, or maybe just get your mind off things, come by." His words were kind, but they lingered in her mind with a trace of mystery. She remembered his look the night before, a fleeting glance, curious, almost too long. Without overthinking, Emma dressed, stepped outside, and began walking. The streets she'd known forever felt suddenly different, as if each turn carried her closer to something uncharted. David's door was ajar when she arrived. He looked up as she entered, a quiet smile curving his lips. He didn't speak at first. Instead, he crossed the room slowly, his presence filling the space like music. There was no tension, only an ease between them. Two people caught between laughter and silence, between thought and instinct. The world outside faded. Time softened. And for a while, there was nothing but the shared rhythm of their breathing, the wordless conversation of hearts that understood before they spoke. When Emma finally left, the sun was sinking again, and everything glowed in amber light. She didn't feel regret, only the strange calm of someone who has crossed into a new chapter without meaning to. Days passed, and then Leonardo returned. He appeared at her father's house, as though nothing had changed. But when his eyes met hers, all the unspoken words of that afternoon came rushing back. Later, in the quiet of the backyard, he found her again. The sun was setting, its last light trembling on the horizon. "It's not over," he said softly, "unless you want it to be." Emma didn't answer. She only lowered her gaze, her silence saying more than words could. That evening, what had been paused began again, this time slower, deeper, gentler. Not rushed, not forbidden. Simply inevitable. The days that followed were filled with a fragile beauty. Fleeting moments, half smiles, and stolen glances that carried more meaning than entire conversations. Emma wasn't seeking explanations anymore. She was learning about herself, about desire, about how easily a single look could shift the course of a life. One afternoon, while walking down a tree-lined avenue, her phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number. "Hi, it's Marco," the message said. "I heard you stopped by David's. I just wanted you to know if you ever need to talk, I'm here." Marco, the quietest of them all, observant, thoughtful, always in the background but never distant. That evening, they met at a small cafe just outside the city. They talked, though the true conversation happened in the pauses, in the way their hands brushed on the table, in the way his steady gaze met hers without expectation. When they stepped outside, the air was crisp. Marco offered his jacket. "I'm fine," Emma smiled. "I know," he replied softly, "but sometimes it's all right to let someone keep you warm." The words lingered, and in that suspended moment, Emma reached for his hand. No explanations, no promises, just a quiet understanding that sometimes the heart seeks connection not to fill a void, but to remember what it means to feel. They walked side by side beneath the amber streetlights, not knowing where the road would lead, but certain of one thing: every step was hers to take. That night, Emma understood. This was never just about passion. It was about awakening, about discovering the many versions of herself reflected in the eyes of others. And she was no longer afraid to see who she might become. Want to know what happens next? Stay with me, because Emma's journey has only just begun. Every choice, every glance, every heartbeat will bring her closer to something unexpected. If you believe that the most powerful emotions arrive when we least expect them, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me next time for the next chapter of Emma's Autumn.